9 wildest Johnny Carson moments. Number 4 will leave you stunned. For 3 decades, Carson welcomed America into their homes 5 nights a week. As Tonight Show host, he projected an image of polished professionalism, the unshakable king of late night, always ready with sharp wit and charm. Yet even Carson, master of control, was sometimes blindsided by live TV chaos. He took pride in always being ready, recalled a longtime Tonight Show producer. But even he couldn't always hold that trademark composure when things went off script. Here we count down 16 unforgettable, unscripted moments from his legendary run. Times when the Unflappables host was overpowered by guests, emotions, or pure unpredictability. And number 8 sparked more letters than almost any other moment in the show's history, leaving some viewers shocked while others delighted in Carson's raw honesty. First, let's revisit the tomahawk bit that led to TV's most famous laughing fit. A sequence so perfectly timed it couldn't have been staged if they tried. 1. Ed Ames's tomahawk mishap. What began as a routine demonstration turned into a classic. Ames, then playing Mingo on Daniel Boone, joined Carson in April 1965 to display tomahawk throwing. The segment started calmly, with Ames explaining technique while Carson listened. A wooden cowboy cutout was brought out for the throw. Then came the accident that made television history. Ames hurled the tomahawk with skill, but it struck directly in the target's crotch. The audience roared instantly, but Carson's reaction turned it legendary. Johnny completely lost control, remembered a director watching from the booth. He'd laughed before, but never like that. He doubled over, tears streaming, unable to speak for minutes. The laugh went on for nearly 3 minutes, an eternity on live TV. When he finally caught his breath, he delivered a killer line. But that's indefinite. All right, I didn't even know you were Jewish. The audience exploded again, proof of Carson's unmatched timing. What made it unforgettable was how unguarded Johnny became. The mask of professionalism fell as he surrendered to real laughter. That's why he was loved, explained a former NBC executive. In a world of carefully managed images, viewers saw Carson lose control. The tomahawk scene became so iconic it was replayed endlessly, even again during his farewell week in 1992 as one of TV's most perfect unscripted moments. 2. Don Rickles and the broken cigarette box. Carson was particular about his set, every item carefully placed. One prized possession was a wooden cigarette box on his desk. So when Don Rickles, guest hosting, in October 1973, accidentally broke it, he panicked. The following night, Carson returned, showed the broken box on air, and vowed revenge. But no one guessed how that revenge would play out. Months later, Johnny discovered Rickles filming CPO Sharkey on a nearby stage. In a spur-of-the-moment decision, Carson grabbed cameras and barged in. That was never planned, revealed a Tonight Show producer. Johnny simply said during a break, "Isn't Rickles taping today? Let's go." The crew grabbed gear and rushed across the lot. What came next was pure spontaneity. Carson burst into Rickles' live taping, leaving the sitcom audience baffled. Rickles, in uniform, mid-scene, looked genuinely stunned. "They told me you broke it last night. Well, I hope you replace it," Carson said. Rickles stumbled through apologies, pleading to stay in Johnny's good graces. "I was in the middle of a scene," he protested. Carson shot back, "I don't care about your scene. You broke my box." The joy wasn't just the ambush, but the warmth between them. Carson's mock outrage only highlighted his affection for Rickles. "Johnny wouldn't have done that with anyone else," said a director. It showed how deep their friendship ran, comfortable with teasing on air. Johnny usually stayed in control, but with Don, he'd take the joke himself. The cigarette box stunt became an instant classic, replayed for decades. A rare night when Carson tossed aside the script and let chaos win. 3. Bette Midler makes Carson cry. As Carson's reign neared its end in May 1992, emotions grew stronger. The second-to-last show with Robin Williams and Bette Midler was expected to entertain, but instead it produced one of Carson's most moving farewells. Near the close, Midler, after light-hearted banter, changed the mood completely. She announced she wanted to sing something special for Johnny. Her choice was the bittersweet classic "One for My Baby and One More for the Road." Singing directly to Carson, the moment was intimate and raw. For once, television's most composed host was visibly in tears. "You could hear a pin drop," remembered a sound engineer on set. Everyone, audience, crew, knew they were witnessing something rare. Carson wasn't just being emotional, he was saying goodbye to his career. For a man known for restraint, this open vulnerability was unprecedented. Carson spent most of his career keeping an emotional distance, warm yet never fully exposing his inner self. At this point, though, that barrier dropped entirely. Instead of covering it with humor, Johnny let the silence speak, recalled a director from the last shows. He allowed himself a rare human connection with Bette and the viewers. The power of that moment came from its rarity, since Carson almost never revealed that vulnerable side. When Midler finished, he leaned in and kissed her hand, a sincere gesture that said more than words. Then, looking straight into the camera, he quietly admitted, "I can't top that." Critics now point to it as one of television's most genuine moments, when Carson's usual reserve gave way to raw emotion during a personal farewell. "He's settling in," Johnny said, before adding, "Well, I can't just sit here. I can't carry on with an animal on my head." Applause. The tiny creature charmed the audience. Carson squirmed as he asked, "Did he just spit? Was that drool?" This was the infamous moment when a handler's monkey climbed onto his head. Over decades of animal segments, none was more unforgettable than Joanne Steele's 1979 visit with her capuchin. The routine opened normally, with Steele explaining the animal's behavior while Johnny listened. Then, in a flash, the monkey jumped on his head as if his hair were a jungle gym. "There was no warning," recalled a cameraman. "1 second it was still, the next it was in Johnny's hair." The brilliance wasn't the monkey itself, but Carson's unshaken calm. Instead of swatting it away, he froze with a resigned smirk as the animal wrecked his trademark hair. "Johnny's hair was sacred," said the show's makeup artist. "Seeing it ruined while he stayed deadpan was priceless." When the handler retrieved the monkey, Johnny stared at the camera, his hair sticking up wildly, and quipped, "And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I stick with cats." The crowd erupted in laughter. The magic lay in Carson's ability to make chaos funny, without losing composure. "That was Johnny at his sharpest," noted a longtime producer. The audience wasn't laughing at him, but sharing in the ridiculousness. He always knew the line, and he happily became part of the gag if it worked. That clip soon became one of the most replayed in the archives, perfectly showing Carson's grace even when things turned messy. Carson introduced Steve Martin's bizarre act by calling it a very unusual illusion before handing him the stage. In 1980, Martin delivered one of his absurdist Great Flydini routines. Pretending to zip his pants, he pulled out eggs, a salt shaker, a ringing phone, and even a tiny, waving hand. "What sold it was Carson's breaking composure," said a staff writer. "At first he tried to play straight man, but as the nonsense escalated, Johnny was visibly cracking up. By the end, he was doubled over, while Martin stayed perfectly serious." The joy came from seeing Johnny genuinely surprised. He loved when someone truly entertained him, said a producer. Few comedians could still catch him off guard, but Steve did. Martin's act became a classic example of subversive, absurd comedy. For Johnny, it was a chance to simply laugh without being the host. After cameras cut, he was still laughing, telling a producer, "This is what makes the job worthwhile." When Robin Williams arrived, The Tonight Show's polished structure dissolved into frenzy. His unstoppable energy and improv pushed Johnny out of his usual rhythm. Johnny once said Robin was like trying to catch lightning while it's already gone, remembered a writer. Most guests followed Johnny's lead. Robin flipped the script. In one early 1980s visit, he ignored film promotion and dove straight into manic impressions, physical gags, and even using Johnny's desk as a stage. Directors panicked in the booth, "Where's this going?" But Johnny waved them off. He knew Robin's chaos was best left to run free. The fun was watching Johnny give up control and laugh so hard he wiped away tears, content to be Robin's audience. Producers said Johnny adored that Robin kept him guessing. After thousands of predictable interviews, Williams was gloriously unpredictable. Carson would even warn crowds beforehand, "Expect the unexpected." Few guests earned that kind of introduction, proof of Robin's brilliance. In 1976, Frank Sinatra arrived on The Tonight Show carrying the weight of legend. Few comedians dared risk offending him, given his reputation and influence. Don Rickles wasn't one of them. Sitting beside Carson, Sinatra endured Rickles' merciless roast. "Look at him, the big star. This man is overrated." The camera then caught Carson, nervously laughing but visibly unsure how Sinatra would respond to the insults. A producer later confirmed Johnny was genuinely nervous that night. Carson had witnessed Sinatra's outbursts many times before and understood he wasn't fond of being mocked. The studio carried a heavy tension. Would Sinatra shrug it off or explode? The scene hit its climax when Rickles, in his trademark style, grabbed Sinatra's knee and joked, "Frank, I'm only fooling. You know I adore you. How about a ride home?" To everyone's relief, Sinatra cracked up with genuine laughter, showing he admired Rickles for treating him like anyone else instead of tiptoeing around his reputation. "That was gutsy," Carson later told a producer. "Don knew exactly where the edge was, though the danger was still real." Few dared to tease Sinatra openly and walk away unharmed. What gave the exchange weight wasn't only the laughs, but its cultural meaning. It was one of those rare times Sinatra, known for carefully guarding his image, let himself be roasted without payback. For Carson, who thrived on creating a stage where anything might unfold, it was a shining example of live TV's magic when strong personalities collided unexpectedly. Were you always kind of lively? What's the word for it? You grew up in Tennessee, right? Strong, I guess. Sturdy. Bosammy. Bossy. Yeah, that's what they'd say. Which leads us to number 8, Dolly Parton and the infamous Remark. By 1977, Dolly was already celebrated for her music and her curvy figure, which she often joked about herself. During her Tonight Show appearance, she and Carson traded the playful banter audiences loved. Then Carson delivered a line that would become one of the show's most infamous moments. Looking at her low-cut dress, he said, "I'd give a year of my life to see under that blouse." The audience reacted with gasps and laughter at once. Dolly, ever graceful, laughed along, but the live broadcast had already cemented the moment. "You could feel the control room freeze," remembered one director. At that time, such remarks were still seen as fair game. Even so, it was unusually blunt for Johnny, who usually projected a more courteous image. The comment sparked more mail than almost anything else in the show's history. Some called it refreshingly bold, others thought it was crude. Though Carson never apologized publicly, insiders said he admitted privately that he'd gone too far. Dolly, however, never complained and later said she took it as a compliment. The real importance of the moment was how it reflected shifting cultural standards. What had once been overlooked was now facing closer scrutiny. For Carson, normally a master at judging the line, it was one of his rare stumbles. "That line would never air today," said one TV historian, but it perfectly captured a time when television was still testing the boundaries between honesty and respect. The incident endures as one of Carson's most talked-about moments, remembered both for its humor and its place in the broader conversation about fame, gender, and changing cultural expectations. "What was that guy's name in Vegas? H. something. He's got a better gig than you, only works 2 hours a week." Number 9. Bob Hope flops, and Carson has had enough. Bob Hope was once America's comedy icon, spanning vaudeville, radio, film, and TV. His Tonight Show visits should have been gold, and once they were. But by the 1980s, a troubling pattern appeared. Hope, then well into his 70s and 80s, arrived with stale material, often reading directly from cards, out of step with the audience. "Johnny dreaded those nights," said a writer from the show. Once brilliant, Bob had become mechanical, recycling the same jokes on golf and politics. The awkwardness came from watching Carson, a master of timing, forced to act like Hope's lines were working. Johnny never showed his feelings on camera, but backstage, after a rough night, he muttered, "Hope doesn't listen, he just talks." It was a rare, unfiltered remark about someone he once idolized. The worst of these visits came in the mid-1980s, when Hope's current events jokes fell flat and disconnected. As Bob plowed ahead with his cue cards, Johnny's expression betrayed his true feelings, caught between politeness and discomfort. Johnny's grin kept tightening, remembered a cameraman. He'd loosen his tie and glance at Ed, his signal that the bit was tanking, but he'd tough it out. The sad part was the contrast between Hope's early brilliance and his decline. For Carson, who revered comedy's legends, it was like watching a sports hero past his prime. "It was like Willie Mays at the end of his career," said one producer. The reminder was sharp. Comedy doesn't last forever, and even legends fade. Despite his private disappointment, Carson always honored Hope publicly, respecting his place in entertainment history and recognizing what it meant for his own career.